Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rule the Roost podcast. And welcome, kind of for the first time, Bardi, Windy's sidekick and best friend, as you're known to the internet. How you getting
Hello,
on?
hello, Jack. Yeah, it is the first time. The first time official. I think the first time I ever appeared on Rule the Roosters at a home game, it was summer or something, and you shoved a microphone in my direction and said, "How do you feel about Højbjerg?" And I think I just went off on Højbjerg. Those are the glory days, huh? They were good old days of mid-table, upper table kind of battles. That was all right back then.
Exactly. It was halcyon days, isn't it?
Who would have known? Who would have known that those were going to be classified as good old days?
I mean, can I say from the off, Bardi, are we venturing into the territory that has seen you this year branded as one of the most toxic Tottenham fans on the internet? Do you think?
I don't know how this has happened because I'm generally a person that doesn't really care about who's managing as long as we're winning games. So maybe what I think, Jack, is I don't have the stomach for it. I don't have the stomach for a rebuild. That's my problem.
That's it. I mean, there aren't many things I don't have the stomach for, but a rebuild is, I've been. I mean, it has been quite wild, hasn't it? I mean, I was talking to you about this kind of in DMs and stuff because there was an episode of The Extra Inch a couple of weeks ago when you were reading out a few emails which were basically just insulting you because you have a difference of opinion on the manager, which is quite wild. Because I from listening to you guys, you're not exactly. You're not sitting there shouting and screaming about him, insulting him, being abusive towards him. What I see is you essentially just have some fairly down the line, pretty straightforward criticisms of the guy that's in charge of the football club.
I think so. I mean, Windy's upset because of lack of rotation, not playing youth players until he's forced. Nathan's upset because we no longer press coherently or do anything that we originally did, or the reason why we signed the manager. And I'm just upset that we're so open and teams just pick up the ball and just run straight. Don't even have to dribble past anyone, and they've got a shot on goal, and we're not winning games. That's all I care about ultimately is winning football matches, and Postecoglou just doesn't deliver enough wins ultimately.
That's it, isn't it? Because I've been sort of, I would say I've probably, if I'm being brutally honest, I've veered more towards Ange out since November-ish time, December-ish time, but I've still been fairly on the fence about it. I would say my feelings have definitely turned a corner the past few weeks where I don't even really particularly dislike the guy. I quite actually like him in some respects. In my heart of hearts, in the pits of my soul, I feel like it's done. I can't see how we turn this around because it always feels like there's something just over the horizon, isn't there? There'll always be something that we can wait for. And when that happens, it's going to be really, really good under Postecoglou. But the way I see it now, it's been 2 and a bit years. It's been at least a solid year now of Spurs being, I mean, is it fair to say, actually quite abject? I think we've been really quite poor, as bad as I ever remember as being. I mean, if you were to search your soul, Bardi, and go against sort of things that you feel or have said in recent times, can you see any way this actually does turn around, that we end up being a team that challenges for the Premier League? As you know, let's not let people off the people said Ange Postecoglou would be doing for Spurs, right? When we signed him, there was a lot of hype.
I loved Antonio Conte. When we signed Antonio Conte as our manager, I think I was the happiest that I've ever been over a managerial appointment. I thought this was it, and I thought this was Tottenham getting serious. And that first season, he came in, changed things. We got top 4. I was like, I am so sold on this project that it's going to fix Tottenham, and we're going to become a great football team. And it didn't work out. It went so bad, and I couldn't understand it. And it turned down, and then we ended up with Postecoglou, and I was just like, no. If Conte can't do it, Postecoglou definitely can't do it. And then those first 10 games, like everyone else, I was just swept away by this enthusiasm. I remember the glorious sunshine at the Sheffield United game, which ultimately, they went down with like 10 points, and we just scraped the win. But it didn't matter because there was something there. And like the whole could we started popping up. But that belief and that kind of moment we had is so far removed now that I don't think we could ever get back to that feeling. Too much has gone on. And I don't think he can fix it. I don't think he can turn this club back into the club that he wants it to be. He's been let down by the board, obviously. He's been let down. He's let himself down with bad coaching decisions, our set pieces for a period of time, the way our midfield works, the regression of Bissouma back to the player that Conte refused to play. There's issues there of his own making as well. I don't think he could turn this around, which is why I think we do need a change. It's sad because he seems like a nice bloke, and I think it's weird that being a nice guy at Tottenham gets you so far, because had he been a prick like Conte or Jose, or been saying the things like Pochettino said towards the end, he would have been sacked a long time ago. And the fact that he hasn't really lost the players either, they seem to care a bit about him. But it's just all round, it's a sad state of affairs. And I kind of feel sorry for him a little bit, to be honest.
Do you think we'll get on to we'll talk about the AZ RZ game in depth in a bit, but just in tune with this conversation, do you think it's safe to say that his Tottenham career hinges on this, or do you think we've arrived at a point where even if he does go on to win the Europa League, we might just say thanks for the memories, goodbye in summer?
I think there's a lot.
I can't really tell what the club's head's at, if I'm brutally honest with you.
No, I think there's a lot of lessons we can maybe learn from Man United. Maybe that one thing of Ten Hag, they didn't want him, but he won a cup, so they almost felt compelled to keep him. And I guess that's maybe why Levy decided to pull the trigger on Mourinho, because he didn't want Mourinho to win a cup and then be kind of stuck with him. But I think no matter what happens, Postecoglou will walk away. I mean, if he wins the Europa League, he's one of our most successful managers in our history. He gets a statue. He definitely gets a mural. If he does the thing that nobody can do, at win a trophy at Spurs, then he will go down. That kind of weird kind of legend, not a legend, but that kind of weird grey area of what was he. Ultimately, I think it's going to be a funny time that we're going to refer back to this for like decades to come. Oh, do you remember that Postecoglou era where somehow we managed to win Europa League? It would be very Tottenham to have that.
Well, I mean, if you think about our last trophy, it's Juan Ramos that delivered that.
Yeah.
Was it Glenn Hoddle? No, it wasn't Hoddle. It was too early for Hoddle.
The other trophy, George Graham.
With this rogues gallery.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, look, before we do dive into the Europa League, we have obviously played and drawn against Bournemouth this weekend in fairly disappointing circumstances. I think it was one of the least enthusiastic of feelings I've had from Tottenham coming back from being 2-0 down at home. It kind of felt like we achieved par in some respects, in that I know Iraola's doing a great job. I know Bournemouth are a good side, but maybe it's the Tottenham arrogance in me. There's that part of me that still thinks we should be turning Bournemouth over, regardless of what's happening. I mean, how did you feel? Were you at the game, mate? How did you feel about it?
No, I wasn't at the game. I've got a marathon on Sunday, so I'm kind of like shielding myself from germs and the flu. So I didn't fancy standing in Beavertown on Sunday. So I sold my ticket to the poor soul who bought my ticket. Sometimes when you sell your ticket on the exchange, you're like, oh God, I wish I could like message that person and say, I'm so sorry.
Hope you enjoyed your holiday though.
So I didn't go, but it's strange that Bournemouth have battered us twice this season. We lost 1-0 away to them at home and away, and they really gave us a good thumping. And then in this game as well, and it's amazing how Bournemouth, plucky little Bournemouth, have become the club that we were almost like aspiring to be. It shows character that we can come back and draw 2-2. I think a little bit of luck, a little bit of muscle memory in some of our players, Maddison and Son turning it on for moments. But the strange thing is we were so bad, but we were actually really good in like a couple of minutes here and there. For a couple of minutes every now and then, we looked like a coherent team who knew what they were doing. And then Bournemouth would just get the ball, turn and run straight, and we would look like a Postecoglou team. Yeah, like you said, it's funny place to be coming back from 2-0. Normally it's like, yeah, you stole a point, but it really did feel like, I don't know, we actually did pickpocket a point from them. They didn't deserve that.
Do you? There's been a bit of chat, as obviously, we're obviously going to get linked with Iraola. Quite a few Spurs fans after that game are saying, oh, actually, I don't know if I want him. Like he seemed quite naive in that second half, as if he let Spurs, he let the lead slip essentially to a particularly underwhelming Spurs. Does that give you any pause for concern? Or, I mean, do you even like Iraola as well? Do you sort of fancy him as a potential Spurs boss?
I find him quite interesting. I think this whole kind of high football, frenetic running around, kicking people up in the air and then attacking really fast and direct, I kind of like that. It's not my usual cup of tea, but I do like that. I think ultimately he's one of those guys that it reminded me very much of Pochettino's Southampton, that has really good they have really good ideas on how they're going to play, but they've kind of pushed the limit of all those individuals. So they're kind of maxed out. If we give Iraola a better set of players, like when Pochettino upgraded from Southampton to Spurs, maybe the ceiling goes a little bit higher. So that's quite interesting. So yeah, there's definitely something about him. Right now, we're looking at every manager that's flashing a bit of leg, and we're like, yeah, we want that guy or we want this guy. But he's definitely one on the good manager shortlist, I think.
I think one of the main things that stood out for me from them really more than Iraola was Semenyo. And I kind of look at him and I think, I know it's such a basic take because everybody wants him at the moment and it seems like it would be a fit. Spurs want more wingers and stuff, but he really does look like he would be custom built for the type of system we're trying to put together here, right? Whether it's Ange's in charge or whether it's Iraola. You a fan of him at all?
I mean, you could pretty much plug and play a lot of our players into that system. Odegaard fits in there. Solanke, obviously, the defenders works there. The midfielder's an issue. We'd need to fix that. But Cardozo over in Betis, who I kind of like just for the theory of a midfielder that tackles, I think would fit in quite nicely in the Tyler Adams role. Pardon?
What a novelty!
yeah, that's what I mean. So just if we could, and Bergvall would fit beautifully. The fullbacks would work quite nicely. I do think, despite how bad this season has been, there is so much hope and there's so much promise around some of our individuals. Solanke's an incredible number 9. Yeah. I love the way he presses and the way he gets involved. And when he plays, we look like a better team. I love the young players, Gray, Bergwald, all those guys. And Spence, obviously, has had an incredible season. We've got Vicario, good goalkeeper. Kinski, decent backup. There is a lot of hope there. It just needs the right manager with the right style to kind of make it work.
I enjoyed your conversation about Vicario the other week. You're essentially making the point that we've signed what did we sign for? Peanuts, really, wasn't it? 11 mil,
yeah,
or something like that. And you're saying if there's teams like Inter or whoever coming in for him for 30 plus mil, you'd be tempted to take it, right? And
thank you for repeating that take on this podcast, just to upset a whole new set of listeners.
I was sort of referencing this the other day, though. I was like, I completely saw your point.
We're not a selling club. Big clubs don't sell. Big clubs sell when the time is right or when things line up. And ultimately, I think Tottenham's problems is we've never sold. We don't sell correctly. Like Kyle Walker, we sold Kyle Walker for a lot of money at what we thought was a peak time. We sold him. Heung-min's son is an incredible footballer who's done so much for our club. But now ultimately we're left with like a legend whose market value is dropping and dropping.
50 mil we could have got for Dyer, mate. 50 mil.
That's another Dyer. We could have got £100 million for Delhi, and as much as I love Delhi, and as much as like we need to be more efficient everywhere, on the pitch, off the pitch, and sometimes you may have to sell. And we wanted a ball playing goalkeeper, and Vicario, he's a great shot stopper, but Kinski is a better ball player, but his shot stopping is nowhere near there. And thank God Vicario's fixed, because I think we would have lost a lot more games. Definitely against AZ, we would have lost more than 1-0. We probably would have got battered against Bournemouth. So it's kind of, Postecoglou is so changed that he's gone from a ball-playing goalkeeper idea to one that just shot stops now. It's just a peak shot stopper.
It sounds, it's bad to say, and it's quite unpleasant to say of Tottenham playing Bournemouth at home. Vicario genuinely kept us in that game.
Yeah, he did.
It's quite annoying about. I'm sure Kinski's a young player. I'm sure he will be a very good goalkeeper in time. You know, that first game he had, it was Liverpool, was it?
Liverpool.
The first game? Yeah. First game against Liverpool, we were suddenly like, wow, you know, this kid's Vicario's not getting back in the team. And then as the weeks unfolded, we were like, okay,
Yeah.
he can't really make saves, which is, you know, that's kind of important for a goalkeeper, but he's good with his feet.
He is good with his feet, and he just needs time. Like when he was
he's
with,
a kid, isn't he? Like in a goalkeeping sense.
I mean, Vicario is 27, 28 now, and obviously we signed him just 2 years ago. So it took him until his mid to late 20s to finally make a mark on football. He was pottering about for like relegation teams in Serie A until finally it worked for him. So we got time, and I've always wanted Spurs to have a good backup goalkeeper, like somebody who can eventually step up and take over. We never had that with Lloris. We never had a contingency plan in place so we could then move on. And I think Spurs, we need to be better at moving players on. Once before they dip, you sell them and then you reinvest the money. Obviously, that comes back to like Spurs are going to waste their money again. But I think our investment's been pretty sound the last couple of years. There seems to be there's definitely a plan there, and the quality of players we're bringing in are good. They're perhaps not what everybody wants, but there's definitely talent there.
You've seen Inter apparently all over Paratici at the moment. They really want him in this summer. They're sort of overhauling everything, which I don't know how I feel about that, because I think on balance he's actually been really good for Spurs, hasn't he? And he's obviously still working for us behind the scenes, like in a sort of unofficial capacity, because he's not supposed to be working, is he? But yeah, I don't know. Vicario's really, realistically speaking, I don't think any Italian clubs are probably going to pay what Spurs would want for Vicario now, because Levy will want 50 plus mil for him. He wouldn't let him go for anything less than that. And we've got I'd like to, you know, I made a little joke about him not being. I said something about him. If only he was as aggressive from corners as he is with away support, or something like that. But he's a fine goalkeeper. I really like him. You know, I think he's very, very talented, and he's exactly what Spurs need right now, which is for the most part just a solid. He's a solid goalkeeper. He's the type of keeper that I've looked at from other clubs. I think why can't Spurs ever just especially when Lloris was in kind of the tail end of his career, and we were sort of rotating with sort of second in command, like a Fraser Forster or a Michel Vorm or somebody like that. I'd always think, why can't Spurs just get a solid, decent goalkeeper? Everybody else, so many teams around Europe seem to hire just solid goalkeepers that they're not Alisson Becker, but they're still just good players. And that's what Vicario is. I think he's better than solid. I think he's actually a very good goalkeeper. But yeah, I'm more than happy with him. There was a return for Christian Romero in the you know, Christian Romero. There's a lot of conversation around Christian Romero, but a return for him against Bournemouth, and I thought he largely stunk the place out. Really, not a very good return from him. But I think the feeling of that one is heightened because of the stuff with him, the national team, the physios, all that sort of thing. In truth, it's a player who's missed a large amount of football. He doesn't have the match sharpness, who's been thrown in against a team like Bournemouth, who are particularly aggressive in the opposition half, right? And I don't think there's much more to it than that, is there? But how do you feel about him? Because you've just been saying there about us knowing when to sell at the right time. And I've been kind of like pecking at Nathan a little bit when he's talking about Romero on Twitter and stuff, just saying, well, you know, Nathan, you're always one of the biggest advocates of selling players at the right time. And now suddenly you don't want to sell Christian Romero. To me, again, it just feels a little bit, I don't know, it feels like there's so much noise around him and Tottenham and everything that, to me, if we got a sizable, decent offer for him, I really would be tempted to take it. And it's not me saying I don't think he's an incredible player. He clearly is. But again, it sort of feels like the right time to me. What about you?
Yeah, I think sometimes we need to separate emotional feelings from individuals. Romero, Romero, I don't think he's going to drop in value. So I think he's got a value to him. And if a team comes in and offers 60 million, I mean, in this world of FFP, I don't know how finances work, but if you get like 50 million pounds of him, then I think over the years that's a big profit, or the way they'll fix it in the books. If Real Madrid or somebody comes in and offers that money, then sell him. But with Van Dijk's contract up this season, I don't see someone going out and splashing 50, 60 million pounds on Romero when Van Dijk is sitting there for a free transfer. So I think we may have one more season with Romero before something happens there. He came in and he was really rusty. I think he just needs time. He needs time. The team is malfunctioning. Our midfield is in a mess. He got pressed to bits and he had a hard time. And I don't think there's anything more than that. I don't think he went out to like sabotage the team. I just think he's really rusty.
Some people said that. Has that been a take?
People, the amount of takes these days are all over the place. Yeah. If a good offer comes in, sell him. But I'm pretty sure he'll be here next season. Just because I don't think anyone's going to go out. The type of clubs that will buy him, who's going to drop that kind of money now?
I heard a rumor that if you looked at like Romero's heat map for that game, it spelled Malvinas out on the, the pitch at Tottenham. Just some breaking news, Bardi, as we're talking. Tottenham have confirmed that there will be no raise in the season ticket or match ticket pricing for next season.
There we go. That's good.
I mean, can you imagine if they raised the prices after this year?
I've been waiting all week for that news, and that's good. I mean, it's not. They were never going to go down, so I guess them holding price is as good as going down. So that's at least that's something. They have listened to us, but yeah, can you imagine if they had have gone? Here's a 10% increase on your season ticket.
They simply after this season they just couldn't have done that. They simply couldn't have done. I mean, they could have done actually. To be fair, we know what. But
they did put them up when we had no manager. That period of time where we had no manager, and they went, "Oh, the cost of living, everything else, the cost of electricity, it's gone up." We're like, we don't even have a manager. How am I meant to invest for the future when you've not even taken a step? You've not even taken a step towards who's going to lead us into that future.
There's also like that that cost of electricity and stuff. We feel that as well. Tottenham, you got a bit more money than we do. That is good though. That's good to know at least that Spurs have done that. I wonder if this bleeds through because we can talking about Iraola. Let's look at Ange Postecoglou's future at Tottenham. We've sort of hinted at it at the beginning there. I mean, we've actually sort of done more than hinted it. We spoke about whether or not we think he'll be going. I mean, in your heart of hearts, because like I was saying, I can't really get a read on what the club are thinking. There's one part of me that thinks that they'll just get rid of him. They might, if say we go out of Europe and our form continues to, or if form starts to plummet again, we start to drop down the table a little bit more. I think they might get rid of him towards the end of the season and keep Mason in charge. But then there's another part of me that wonders if they are just going to keep him on, if they are going to give him that third season, if they are going to be thinking, because a lot of the noise, a lot of the stuff from apparent ITKs and things, is that the club are fully aware of the fact that he's not had the best circumstances this season, in so much as there's been an aberrative amount of injuries this year to particularly key players, and they still kind of have faith in him. They feel that he hasn't been able to this season hasn't been a true reflection of what he's capable of or what this squad is capable of.
Yeah, and
they don't want the whole circus around bringing somebody else in. There aren't really any other viable candidates, so why not stick with him? And I can't, like, if I'm honest, like, I can kind of maybe see them sticking with him on that basis. Do you think there could be any? No, do you think that could happen, or do you think they'll just bin him?
I think he would need to have. We've got 10 league games left. I think there will need to be an incredible shift in how we play. Like, I think he'd need to win 7, at least 7 of those league games, and not like 7 jammy wins like maybe we did against Brentford or Man U. There need to be 7 statement wins in the next 10 games, a progress to at least the semi-final of the Europa League for them to hang their hat on something else, because this isn't a this season problem. It happened towards the end of last season as well. The club really fell off, and there just hasn't been an improvement. Windy or Nathan said, had we drawn 2-2 with Bournemouth in that style, like 6 weeks or 10 weeks into Postecoglou reign, then you'd go, oh, okay, the team is still figuring things out. I think he's had long enough now to build something a bit more than what he's done, even with the injuries. The injuries are, I said, the injuries are an excuse for us not to challenge for the title or top 4. They're not an excuse for us to be 13th, 14th, 15th in the league, because we're better than that.
This is it for me. This is where the conversation for me loses. I think it comes from a fairly bad faith place, because if you're vocal in, say, your criticism of Ange Postecoglou right now, it's what were you expecting? All teams have a bad year and all this type of thing. And I think those kind of criticisms work in the sense that if Spurs fans were moaning that we're not on course to finish in the top 4 this year and we're having to settle for 7th or 8th place, then I get that. I get people talking about it's a rebuild, it's a process. Because I will say up front, as much as I don't think it's perfect by any stretch of the imagination, I think this squad of players is much better than people give it credit for. And I think it's definitely better than the league position gives it credit for right now. But the problem is with Ange right now is it's not just that Spurs are, 8th or 9th in the table and not doing too well. We've currently got, we're drawing with the worst season we've ever had for Premier League losses in a 38-game season, with still 10 games to go. And from those games, we still need to get, and people will say, well, of course we're going to get that, but we might not. We still need to get 10 points, or else our lowest, our worst Premier League season in a 38-game season is 44 points. We're currently sat there on 34. There's every chance this is going to be our worst ever Premier League season. And I think this is the problem. It's like there are things to understand. There is context around Ange Postecoglou that I have been wrestling with and I have been taking on board. But at the same time, I think there are enough people who are, say, very, very pro-Ange that are willing to accept the fact that on top of like mitigating factors and stuff, this has been a terrible season. It's not just been a bit of an off season. It's been terrible.
It's been unbelievable. It's like we're laughing about it because it's so bad, but there's like no fear of us going down because the bottom 3 clubs are terrible. So the risk of relegation isn't there. Whereas previously, perhaps that year we got 44 points. The relegation was real that year because there was a time where, like, I think West Ham went down once with 42 points. So that there was a time when the bottom 3 weren't so bad. And if you look at the players we have and you compare that to the team that got 44 points, whatever it was you said, I could just imagine that the players we have now are miles better. And we should be performing better than we are. And this isn't a sense of entitlement, saying, oh, this is Tottenham, we should be higher. You're right, a bad season for us as the club that we've become is 8th, 9th. And we accepted that in this first season. We're like, okay, there's teething problems and change of culture and the rest of it. I think this would have been unacceptable as a first season, the amount of games we've lost. And to do this in your second, gone all fighting cock there. To do this
way out of the fighting cock,
to do this in our second season is not acceptable. And ultimately, you can't keep losing football matches because you'll get the sack. And we've sacked better managers in better positions. And like I agree, Conte had to go, but we were 4th in the league when we fired him. And we fired Pochettino, who had started his own rebuild after a Champions League final. And if you look at the games that he lost that season, it was maybe a run of 4 or 5, plus the kind of dodgy league run we had the previous season. But that league run the previous season was still enough to finish top 4. So he'd finished 4th the previous season, got to the Champions League final, and then he'd had a sticky start to his next season and we fired him. And Jose was in a cup final and the rest of that nonsense. So we have fired managers for far less than the crimes that Postecoglou has done.
Have you read or listened to Lloris's autobiography? You know, the one that came out not long ago that was talking about the watches and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'm a bit funny about all this kind of propaganda nonsense. Like, Lloris, stop! If you hadn't have thrown the ball in a few times at Anfield, or the time you came out and you kicked Sane in the head and the rest of it, then perhaps we might have won something. So it's all, they can say what they want.
It's an equally bad look, isn't it? And I think it was a bit of a self-own, as people say, that he sort of came out and said, "Oh, they gave us a watch, and that demotivated us to the point we didn't win a Champions League." You're like, well, it doesn't look good. That doesn't look good on you either, mate. Like, you know, but
you get demotivated, de-incentivized by a nice watch. Come on,
yeah. But the thing that I did find interesting, just there talking about Pochettino, is he was sort of saying in that when Pochettino did get sacked, him and Kane in particular were like phoning each other up, like, is he taking, as Maurizio called you, is he taking the piss? Like, they couldn't fathom that Spurs would dare to do that. They just couldn't work it out. They were just like, we just got to a Champions League final and we're sacking this guy. Like, really?
Yeah. You can always reflect, and I was one of those voices that thought, okay, fair enough, we've sacked him because the league form and everything else. But now I'm like, please, my God, what did we do? If I could go back and just slap myself around the head, I'd be like, no. He has to stay. He has to stay. Let him. He earned the right to finish that season. I don't think Postecoglou's earned the right to stay this long into his Spurs career, considering how bad we've been. And we started the season, we were just scoring loads of goals and not really conceding many. But now that kind of goal difference has now crept up on us. And I saw something about the amount of XG we conceded at home, and teams come to us now and they just pepper us all the time with shots.
Yeah.
It's completely gone the other way. We can't beat a press. We can't low block. We can't really counter with any kind of meaning. And yeah, if a team is smart, they beat us. Had Bournemouth just gone, all right, we're 2-0 up, let's just part the bus, then we probably would have lost that game and had Kepa not done a madness.
The other thing I think is, like, I know at the start of his tenure, we demonstrated these nice kind of passages of play and everything like that. Honestly, it might seem simplistic. All I have seen Tottenham do for the past 12, 13, 14 months maybe is just run the ball down the wings and try and spam crosses into the box. We do the same thing every single game. Like, we must be a video analyst's dream, because I don't see any spark to what we're doing anymore. I don't see any inventiveness. I don't see us do anything particularly adaptive or clever or anything where I set up and I watch a Spurs game and I think, oh, actually that was decent there. I tell a lie. When there was a game, maybe it was even the Liverpool game. It might be the Liverpool game, the first leg of the Carabao, when actually I think he did switch it up a bit and he played a more conservative brand of football. And I actually think we completely outplayed Liverpool. So much so, I think it actually took them by surprise. They were really quite rattled that night. You know, you saw was it Trent, wasn't it, getting into one with a ball boy and stuff? And you know that's a sign when a team has like lost their ass, because you got players getting in petty things with like a 12-year-old on the side of the pitch. But aside from that, like, there's nothing about this that really excites me. And I agree with you, because lad called Rick, who I've spoken to quite a bit down the years, Galaxy Hero, he sort of said, you know, his point was like, give Ange more time, give him a fully fit squad. When it's working, it's in full swing. But I'm just sort of saying to him, like, I don't think he's earned. I can't get on board with this idea, mate, that the injuries that we've had, as severe as they have been, just means that, well, you can't possibly contest football matches.
Yeah, and there were centre-backs, you know, it's like it wasn't like we'd lost for an extended period of time our best forwards. Ultimately it was our centre-backs. And Archie Gray has come in, and he's not the greatest defender, but he's perhaps even better than like Van der Ven in build-up. So there was a decent swap there, and Danso's done all right as well. So
he's done now as well.
I mean, our medical team have always been they've always been a bit dodgy because we've always suffered from injuries. But yeah, he hasn't earned the right. There has been moments, you're right, where things just click into place. The second half against Villa, that moment we went to City and they were really bad. And I guess if you're really pro Ange, you can like hang on to those moments. Go look what we can do, but they're just so few and far between now. That this AZ game is huge. If we lose to like a middling Dutch team, then it really is an embarrassment considering the rest of them are probably going out this week in Europe as well. Yeah.
Where are you on, just because you just touched on it there, our medical team versus Ange's methods versus just players being somewhat unfortunate? Because Danso doing a hammy, I've loved Danso. I thought he's been absolutely brilliant. I thought he's been an incredible signing. I think it's been a big thumbs up for Langer, who I think has been getting a lot of flack, but has actually made some pretty decent, from what I understand, data-led acquisitions for Spurs. And Danso's clearly one of those. I mean, 20-odd mil, and to me, looks like one of our best defenders. I think he looks up there with Mickey van der Ven at least.
Yeah, he's an improvement. He's miles better than Dragusin. He's a proper serious rotation option, and I think I'm very happy with his signing.
What are you making about the amount of injuries, though? Where do you think that blame lies? Because you've had a lot of people have been picking up on Romero saying thank you to the Argentinian physio team, Richarlison thanking the Brazilian physio team.
Richarlison
in isolation or not?
Who's Richarlison? He's been thanking physios as well.
I think he's thanked the Brazilian lot as well. Yeah.
I see. I try not to follow any of the footballers because I just think they just spout the nonsense, and even like post match these days, like Son saying it's a wake up call. It's just like, mate, you've been at this club for 10 years. How have you not woken up? So I try not to follow any of them anymore. But our medical department, there is an issue because it's. Yeah, it keeps happening. Is it down to Postecoglou's pressing? Maybe, but I don't know. I'm not a sports scientist.
The thing for me on that one is as much as, and I have sort of steered away from that one because as much as I have dug out Postecoglou for a lot of things, I also kind of think a lot of managers play this high intensity brand of football. I don't think you can just say, "Oh, this is Postecoglou's issue." Like this is something he's done wrong. Because I kind of feel if we had Iraola in charge, I think he's picked up a fair few injuries as well of a similar nature. There's just we've had it. There's that wider uncomfortable conversation around the amount of football that players have to play now, right? The amount of strain that is put upon their bodies, the quick turnaround of European games into domestic games into international games.
But Postecoglou ultimately is responsible for that because he had Spence sat there not doing much until we had no choice.
He was just testing him. That was it.
Can you imagine like Jose or Conte had used that line? We would have murdered him. We would have gone after him and said, no, what are you saying? So he didn't use him. He got Region, who 3 years ago was a Spanish international, just sat there stealing 80 grand a week, whatever.
He has looked all right when he's played for us, right? In this system.
Yeah. He could have done some Europa League games. He could have played some League Cup games. He could have offered us something as a rotation. Where there are youth players out there. Bergvall only came in now. Mikey Moore's been injured. But there has been opportunities there for him to use other players and rotate others in and out. Plus, don't forget, he put Romero and Van der Ven back in that Chelsea game when they were on the brink of being injured. And he could have rested them. He didn't have to start them both in that match.
Yeah, I know, because it's such a cop-out, isn't it? Because people say, well, the players, they'll always say if they're ready. Footballers always want to play. Haven't you listened to any sort of footballer interviews for the past few years, like forever? They always say, oh, I'm banging down the manager's door to get into the team. I'm desperate to play, even when they've got an ACL or something. Like that is the manager's job to say you aren't ready yet. Like you can't. And they were clearly miles off the fact that they both got set back months after that game.
They're like dogs. My dog's the same. My dog cuts his paw and he's hobbling around the house, but then you show him the ball. He's like, yeah, come on, let's go. Like, mate, you can't. I'm being a manager here. I'm going to manage my expectations. You're not going out and running around the garden.
What do you think? Because I think people have picked out. They found a few frames from the game against Bournemouth when Danso's holding the back of his leg or something like that. And you don't see, just for clarity, you don't see Danso holding the back of his leg in this video. I've seen people in the comments below saying he was holding his leg just before this. But Postecoglou's saying to him, "Are you good? You're going to carry on? Yeah, you're going to carry on." And I don't think he gets, because he's got form for that, Postecoglou as well. Like, telling players to get on with it, to carry on.
Well, they all have that horrendous documentary where Heung-min Son has got his broken elbow, and Mourinho's like, "Oh, he could play." And they've all done it. Football managers, they've all risked it, because ultimately, you know, this is their livelihood, this is their job. So they need these players to play, and footballers will do it. And can you imagine what happens when a footballer's like, "Oh, I'm injured"? They will go onto social media and it all kicks off. "I wanted to play," or "I'm unavailable for selection." It does kick off.
AZ Alkmaar, biggest. I don't think it's hyperbole to say the biggest game of the season, biggest game in a couple of years, really, for Spurs now. Where do you think it went? Because there was a lot of promise building ahead of that first leg, and it was so flat. I would go as far as to say it's one of the worst performances I've seen under Ange Postecoglou in quite some time, purely because Spurs they just brought nothing to it. Like, we were completely nullified. And I understand AZ Alkmaar turned over Galatasaray. I think they beat them 4-1 at the same ground. So I understand that maybe there's an element of underestimating what AZ Alkmaar could be capable of. Perhaps that's from both the fan base and from the players themselves. But it was a shockingly poor performance, wasn't it? That first leg,
Especially as we've already played them and already beat them. I think it was only 1-0, but I think we comprehensively played them off the park.
yeah.
I
Mikey
think,
Moore. I think that was Mikey Moore coming on and looking unbelievable.
I think it's with Spurs. It's just us as a fan base, we get so optimistic and so hopeful of these matches, and then there's an expectation that they're going to go out there and just deliver. The Europa League is there for us to kind of take, and just for it to do that, it's just disappointing. And it's sad. It's really sad that happened. Why did it happen? I don't even think AZ had to do anything that special to stop us, and that's also a very sad thing about it. I think we'll turn them around. I think we'll turn it around at home.
I was going to ask you, because I actually think we're gonna batter them. I think it might be like a 3-0 jobby. I've just got a feeling that we're gonna, all this noise, all this kind of sound around the club is actually going to spark a lot of these players into doing something. And if that means them, if Christian Romero, if Vicario's cupping his ears to the South Stand at Spurs, if the Spurs fans are getting shushed or whatever, do it. By all means, do it. Yeah, exactly. But just go out there and actually put in a performance, because I think that's what depressed me so much about that first leg against RZ, is that I just looked at it and I just thought, like, this just feels like it's dead. That's the thing. It doesn't feel like they're actually playing or care about it at all. How are we in this position once again? But all the stuff they say around the games, a lot of these players, like Vicario, you know, I know he was kind of getting into one with the away fans, and I think he realised it was a bit of a misstep. He's done a big lengthy apology sort of thing on his Instagram. And I don't mind that, because at least it kind of shows he cares and he's quite invested in the whole thing.
Yeah, there was a bit of like Rooney. Do you remember Rooney at the World Cup where he went up to the camera and was like, yeah, "Come all the way here and boo us"? I'm not upset with, I don't mind the players having a go at the fans, because like you say, there's shows that there's a bit of care there. They want to do something, and I would love it if they cup their, if, like you said, if they come up to us on Thursday and do all of that, then that's great, because that means we've won and it's a positive outcome of all of it, and then everybody kisses and makes up and it's fine. It's like after Postecoglou's first 10 games with us, everyone's like, "Oh my God, he's going to go to Liverpool or Real Madrid." I'm like, that's fine. I don't mind, because if our players are getting linked to those clubs, it means that there's been progress. It's been successful. You know, if they're trying to steal our players or steal our managers because there's been success. So if that kind of moment leads us to win the Europa League, then that's brilliant, and that's ultimately what I want, man. we're both of a similar age, and we've barely seen Tottenham win anything. So winning the Europa League would mean so much to me.
Do you know what's wild? The perspective of this, mate. If you think about our last trophy win, was basically half of our lifetimes ago now.
Yeah.
Well, 17 years ago now since we won the League Cup.
I'm a totally different human being from that one.
All of your cells have regenerated to such a point. You're an entirely different being.
And I remember I wrote a blog about the kind of curse of winning or something a couple of years ago. And I remember if I could go back in time and have a word with myself, I would say celebrate this a little bit more rather than go, celebrate it, but it's
This
Carling Cup.
Yeah.
Because that's what I thought. This is the start of something. We are going to be great now. And then it was a bit like, it's just a Carling Cup. Let's not get too excited. But I would just slap myself in the head. No, go crazy. Get a tattoo. Run down the street naked. Do a bit more because you're going to be waiting, I don't know, a long time. 17 years. That's someone's had a kid and now that kid is in the pub having a pint. That's how long it's been.
Mikey Moore wasn't born. Or maybe he was. Yeah, he would have been just about.
Yeah.
Just about. Mikey Moore was an infant or a fetus.
Yeah.
Which is kind of wild, but I know what you're saying. I've seen some people say, well, if Spurs win the Europa League this year, it will mean we're in the Champions League. No.
No.
I don't care about the Champions League next season. I care about if Spurs win the Europa League. It's massive. It's one of the biggest things you can win in domestic football. And I don't think that's clutching at straws. I don't think that's anything other than if Spurs win it, we should definitely have a bus going down the Seven Sisters.
For sure.
We should all be having a day off work, go down there and just, like you say, just bask in it all. Bask in whoever players doing silly things on the bus because they're drunk and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't matter. And cut out any of the Chelsea fans or anyone else calling you Tim Pot for it. I don't care.
I don't care either. I completely agree.
It's huge. And like you say, you might never see Tottenham win something again.
And then if we win the European Super Cup the following season, do exactly the same again. Get that bus back and go down the high street with it. It's not Tim Pot to celebrate winning stuff. And it's definitely not Tim Pot to celebrate winning the Europa League. There's older fans out there who still, to this day, I mean, we still talk about the Carling Cup, the FA Cup in '91, and there's Spurs fans out there of a certain age that still talk about the night at White Hart Lane when they beat Anderlecht. Those are the moments, man. And yeah, getting back in, the purpose of winning Europa League is not to get back in the Champions League. I don't care about that. The Champions League is this overblown thing anyway that I don't think we would have much chance in winning. The only people that benefit from the Champions League is Daniel Levy and the rest of the people at the club that have the money. I would quite happily do Europa League again next season, just to keep winning something.
I genuinely think the Europa League, in some ways, is actually more exciting. Is a better level of competition because the teams are more evenly matched in many respects, and I quite like the fact it's a bit Tim Pot because it is. It's a little bit. I think we can hold our hands up to that and say it is a little bit Tim Pot. But these latter rounds of it, most of these teams are Champions League teams, right? Most of these teams you would expect to meet on some seasons in a Champions League season. I
mean, it's quite hipster, like Bilbao, Lazio, Tottenham, Frankfurt, Ajax. There's some interesting teams in there, and that makes it Rangers. Who else is in there? Sociedad. There are some interesting teams in there, and it's a really worthy trophy to win.
If we get through against Alkmaar, I mean, there's every chance, unless Ajax have a decent turnaround. I mean, there's only a goal in it so far. Eintracht beat them 2-1 in Amsterdam, but I would imagine Frankfurt will beat them over the second leg. Are you worried about that? Because for me, I mean, as much as Spurs are dysfunctional, I still kind of look at the Europa League and I think if we can just be a proper football club when we play in this competition, there's no chance. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to win it, right?
Just be normal, Tottenham, and we will get to the final. Because if we just play how we should play or how the Ange Postecoglou stands want us to play, then we'll walk it. But then I wasn't afraid of AZ, to be honest with you. And now we're behind at halfway through the tie.
Just quickly, how would you be lining up in this second leg, mate? Are you going to chuck Romero and Van der Ven in, or are you going more Gray and Davis, who I think it might be back for this game?
I think I would probably play Gray and Romero. Because Gray was rested at the weekend and Van der Ven only came on, so I think those are the two that are probably fittest and in line to start. So I would go with those two, and then Son, Solanke, and Odegaard, I guess.
Are you liking Odegaard?
I think he's a child who's been asked to do a lot, in the same way that Bergwijn has as well.
Sounds like he went to the Netherlands ranch, doesn't it? But
Where Spurs expecting teenagers to like save their season, it's quite a place for us to be in.
Yeah. But are you look? Let's end on a triumphant note. We're gonna beat AZ, aren't we? We're gonna beat them. Right?
I think so, and I think there's a lot to be positive about. I think there is some real interesting youth players. There's a real buzz about them. We've got two decent goalkeepers. We've got like a collection of young midfielders. Despite Porro falling off a bus, I think he remains a decent wing-back, full-back. Udogie, Spence, the rest of them. I think there's some real talent in there. We just need the right manager to line them up in the correct way and not make us so open, and I think we'll be fine.
That wasn't too bad for such a toxic fan, Bardi. You did all right there, mate.
I did okay. I'm improving. I've been detoxing myself.
Yeah, hopefully you'll get a few less emails. I'll be interested to see if if I'll get any emails actually this time. I've gotten a few this year actually.
I said to my wife that now opening up the Extra Inch to a whole new set of audience people who are going to be like, fuck it, toxic Bardi. Yeah, there he is.
Cheers, Bardi. Thanks a lot, mate. Anyway,
cheers, mate.
Anything we should be listening out for from you, from the Extra Inch? That's anything exciting coming up?
Loads of stuff behind the paywall, some really good stuff, tactics. A good manager series will be back for the summer, and that always gets people interested. Nathan will do his usual deep dive into all the managers linked with us, who included is like Simone Inzaghi today, which is quite exciting.
Really?
Yeah, but it was I don't know what tier level that was, but
he's not going to come to Spurs, is he? His trajectory's going up there, isn't it, Inzaghi's?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a challenge, Tottenham. It's one of those games that if this was Football Manager and you're not a Spurs fan and you powered it up, who's an interesting team to take over? Who's got a lot of money, a lot of youth prospects? You'd go, Tottenham would be a nice challenge. So, yeah.
We'll see. Anyway, cheers, Bardi.
See you later.